Hello, my name is Mrs. Sturgis. I'll be one of your tour guides today. We'll be exploring August Wilson House and Freedom Corner. Both places are located in Pittsburgh's Hill District. These places are the final stops in our Pittsburgh People and Places virtual tour, created by the Pittsburgh History and Landmarks Foundation. This tour celebrates the fact that many buildings, bridges, streets, and parks in Pittsburgh are named for people who accomplished something important. And hopefully, this tour will be a source of inspiration for you. Who knows? As Pittsburgh continues to grow and change, a place in the future could be named for you based on one of your accomplishments. Chris Rawson and Denise Turner are here to tell you about August Wilson House. Chris Rawson teaches English at the University of Pittsburgh. He's also a theater critic for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and the program chair for August Wilson House. He knew August Wilson and is one of the authors of a guidebook, August Wilson, Pittsburgh Places in His Life and Plays, published by the Pittsburgh History and Landmarks Foundation. Denise Turner is acting chief executive and board president of August Wilson House. She will tell us how this building at 1727 Bedford Avenue in Pittsburgh's Hill District will become a place to celebrate the life of August Wilson, serve the community, and inspire people from around the world. Let's meet them.
Hi, I'm Chris Rawson. I was the longtime theater critic at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and I had the blessing to be the theater critic there when August Wilson appeared on the national scene with plays on Broadway. So I got to follow him all his life, writing about his plays, getting to know him personally. And now I'm connected with August Wilson House, which is really important in the story because not only was it the place where he grew up, he spent the first 13 years of his life, it's at the heart of the Hill District, where he actually lived until he was 33 and then moved away to write plays about the experience of growing up in the Hill District. The Hill District is central to the 10 plays with which August Wilson just conquered the American theater. He didn't graduate from high school. He didn't go to college. What he did was read. He loved to read. And he got his library card when he was 5 at the Carnegie Library, just a couple of blocks from here. He read a lot, educated himself, and when he was in his 30s, he decided he wasn't really a poet, he was a playwright. And he started writing plays, and he wrote the plays about the people he knew in the Hill District. He spent some years without a real job. I mean, he worked a little bit at this, a little bit at that, a little at the other thing, but he hung out listening to people talk. He particularly liked listening to the elders because he said it was important as a young man to find out where his people came from. And his people, of course, were Black Americans who came basically from the South during the Great Migration, the place where their ancestors had been slaves. Their ancestors who had come originally from Africa, and he wanted to be in touch with the history of his people. So that included the South, but it also included, of course, many years, several generations in the Hill District. Having the golden opportunity to know August Wilson for the 20 years from his first play until his last play, he died very young. It's a tragedy. He died at just age 60. But still, I had the opportunity to know him for those 20 years. And one of the things he said about this house, which we call August Wilson House because it's his childhood home, we were going to save it, he said. He didn't really want it to be a museum. He wanted it to be useful. And that's why we're turning it into an art center. 2 rooms that he and his family lived in. If you can imagine a family with 6 kids living in 2 rooms, those will be a sort of a museum, but the rest of the house, the other 8 or 9 rooms in the house, will be study spaces, meeting places, exhibit spaces. They will be, as he wanted them to be, useful. The plays are fictions, but they're based on real life. And August always said that anybody could be a writer. What you want to do is be able to tell the story of your own family look back and see where they came from, listen to the stories they tell. And when you sit down to write, you'll find material just pouring out of you. Great art can grow out of the everyday. Our lives can be made the stuff of great art.
Hi, my name is Denise Turner. I'm the acting chief executive and board president of August Wilson House. I'd like to point out this special window. This is the kitchen window that August and his family looked out when he was growing up. One thing that Mr. Wilson is known to say is that they grew up very poor, but they were rich in love. This very ground that I'm standing on is a place where he and his siblings played. There was a neighbor who had a rooster. That rooster appeared in one of the plays. The inspiration in this very space here was used in 7 guitars. And this is also where his mother cultivated a garden. We have the esteemed honor of this home being designated a historical landmark. Can you believe that this space was in existence in 1840? This space consists of 2 different parts. One was a market and the other was the home. So the 2 years of 1840 and 1880 are significantly important from a historical perspective. But these very walls here, can you believe that this is where August Wilson grew up? And this space was 100 years old by the time he was even born. This building will be an art center here in the Hill District. It will consist of 3 floors. We will have studio spaces on the 2nd and 3rd floors. We will have in the front a space called Bella's Market. The Siger family owned Bella's Market, and that is who August and his family rented from. That space is a hallowed space as well. We will use that for a place of fellowship. We also have a gallery space inside, a couple of different gallery spaces that we will use to hold various programs to engage the community. The exciting news is we have our pre-construction underway. I have in my hands the logo for August Wilson House. I wonder if you all can tell what letter is represented here in this picture. You see the A, which is artistic for August, and then this line here represents the W for Wilson. And then we have August Wilson House. A student's presence is very critical to August Wilson House. We welcome you and we hope that you come and learn all of the things that we have to offer. Denzel Washington is one of our major benefactors, and through the help of Mr. Washington and other Hollywood actors and stars, they were able to help us raise the money for our capital project so that this home can be preserved. Mr. Washington himself is a student of August Wilson's work, and you all know how important and how famous Mr. Washington became and who he is now. That is to say that you can come to this art space and you can hone your craft. You can learn spoken word, poetry, reading, writing, dancing, painting, drawing, all of these things that breed inspiration as young people. So we welcome you and your family to come in April 2022 to fellowship with us here at August Wilson House.
I'd like you to meet Larry Glasco, who teaches history at the University of Pittsburgh and is a trustee of the Pittsburgh History and Landmarks Foundation. Larry is going to tell you the story of Freedom Corner. It is located at Crawford Street and Center Avenue in Pittsburgh's Hill District.
Hi, I'm so glad you guys can be with us and learn about some very important places in Pittsburgh history. I can remember back on a sunny day like this, in the spring of 2000, actually, a group of us, ministers, civil rights leaders, ordinary citizens, including myself, gathered and marched, probably about 100, 150 of us, to the corner to lay the foundation for what was to be known as Freedom Corner. Actually, it had been called Freedom Corner for some time because it started in the mid-1960s when people used to gather right on this spot to start marches toward downtown in protest of all sorts of things. Particularly, they protested jobs, they protested for housing, protested against police brutality. They protested against the war in Vietnam. It became a rallying place because of its location right at the edge of downtown. By 1965, a reporter for the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper called this Freedom Corner. At that time, there were buildings on this spot. This was not an empty spot or a parklet. There were buildings here, and people would gather really on the sidewalk there on Center Avenue on their march to downtown. This was the place that the community, the Hill District community, came together to protest what was the greatest, probably, tragedy ever to befall the Hill, and that is what was called urban renewal. That is the redevelopment of the Hill, which involved tearing down a huge expanse of the commercial center of the Hill for the erection of the civic arena. The idea was that this was to be a benefit to the city and the community, but it turned out not to be so. You know, today, rather than tearing down all the houses and businesses and clubs and life in that area, today we'd be looking at ways to preserve that, preserve what deserved to be preserved, restoring it, rehabilitating it. In fact, this corner became really the rallying point for preventing further destruction of the Hill District. In the fall of 1968, Frankie Pace, one of the people who's honored here, and other members of the community erected a large billboard that said, "No development beyond this point." And that really stopped the city in its tracks and saved what we still have of the Hill District. This area really represents a continuing sense of protest and search for racial, social, economic, gender justice. It's not just blacks have protested from this area, but women protested for women's rights, gay rights protested, all sorts of groups who feel that the city, the state, the nation needs to address their needs, have used this as a symbolic gathering place to move forward. The idea of designating a place as Freedom Corner and making it a place where the community can come together and celebrate their history, remember their history, honor their heroes, was a councilman, Jake Malines, and then later Maline's friend, Salahuddin, who was also a city councilman. They wanted to create on this spot something that would unite the community, that would bring people together, that would remind them of what had gone on, of the past, the present, and inspiration for the future. And so this area was designed by local African-American architect Howard Graves, and was also designed by Carlos Peterson, a local artist who lived just up the street and whose mother at one point lived right on this very site. And Carlos Peterson is somebody I had known personally. He has a lot of commitment to the area. He feels very deeply for the area. And he designed this whole area with a series of concentric circles for the idea of unity, of bringing people together. One circle is called the circle of the living legends. That is, people who were part of the civil rights movement, were still alive and present in the year 2000. The other circle, the smaller circle, is those of the lost legends. That is, people who had been part of the movement, but who had passed. And so both of those are recognized and honored by this monument. Then there is something that Peterson calls the symbol of hope, a figure of hope, where she is flying away up into the sky toward a better future. Yeah, in the center of one of the circles is what's called the Stone of Origin. It's a stone from Africa, from Zimbabwe, that is meant to signal the ties of African Americans to the mother country, to Africa itself. And so that is really, in a way, the heart of the center, so people can reconnect with their past to create a better future. Let me share with you 3 of the names of people who are honored in this monument here for their contributions to Black history. One was Rob Penny, who was a colleague of mine at the University of Pittsburgh, the founder of the Black Studies Department, and a long friend of August Wilson, the playwright. Rob Penny himself was a playwright and a poet. Another figure that's honored at this monument is Thelma Lovett, a social worker who was in some ways really the heart of the Hill District. Really a wonderful, beautiful, kind, soft-spoken woman who was so active in so many aspects of life here. The Thelma Lovett YWCA is named for her. And then the third figure, actually the third one I did not know personally, was Robert Vann. He was the founder and editor of the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper, one of the largest circulation black papers in the country, and a real force in creating a better world for black Pittsburgh and for the city of Pittsburgh itself. So those are three figures who are honored here. There are many figures whose names are engraved in the stones here that really are worth studying, learning about, and spreading the word about who they were for future generations. One of the themes of the memorial here is the idea of protest, but it was also the idea that protest should be peaceful. It should be positive. It should not involve harming other people. It should be in the spirit of Martin Luther King. And that's why Carlos Peterson chose a very meaningful quote from Martin Luther King as a symbol for this monument. It's from his famous speech, "I Have a Dream," that he did in 1963 on the Poor People's March in Washington, D.C. And it reads, "But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds." That is the call to keep the protest peaceful. And that was really one of the things that gave the civil rights movement such energy and made it so successful. It set an example to the country and to the world. People around the world drew inspiration from Martin Luther King and from words and sentiments like that, of the idea of peaceful protest for positive change.
I hope that these virtual visits to Freedom Corner and August Wilson House have helped you learn more about Pittsburgh and about the people who shaped its history. Think for a moment now about your name and what you hope to accomplish in your life. Imagine in the future that a building, bridge, park, or memorial space in Pittsburgh will be named for you. Draw a picture of what that place might look like. Then write a story about what you hope to accomplish in your life that would cause the place to be named after you. How neat that would be. Pittsburgh is my hometown and it's your hometown. I believe that the more you know about your city, the more you care about your city, and the more likely you are to become involved in making it a better place. Think about that idea as you grow up. Thanks for watching, and please keep learning and caring about your city, Pittsburgh.